We are two fat brokers. I'm Barney from Dubai.
Ben from Abu Dhabi.
And today we are going to be talking about the state of the market after the terrifying spectre of COVID has slightly abated, but we're still in COVID.
We're in September?
Early September, yep.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a slight increase in prices in certain areas, both in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi. So we thought we would have a little chat and see the reasonings behind it that we can make head nor tail of. Ben, what's going on in Abu Dhabi?
So as far as we can see, it looks like a bit of and we've spoken about this in other videos and things, a bit of a flight to villas. So villas at the moment very popular. The spectre of being locked down with your kids is sort of weighing heavily on a lot of people's minds, and they want to move from
spaces.
Yeah, from apartments to at least an apartment with a balcony, but also people seem to be keen on villas. But I mean, that would make sense from a rental point of view, but what's unusual is the buying activity that's going on with villas. I mean, if in Abu Dhabi, buying in apartments is still going down, but in villas, in some areas in particular, so West Yas is a great example, Al Reef as well, where you're actually seeing prices going up, as opposed to the apartments which are still going down in the same trend that it has been for the last 4 years. But in those areas, people are really, really keen to buy, and it's interesting why.
Do you think it's a price point thing? Because I mean, if you think about this from a leasing and a sales perspective, because over the last 12 months prices have come down so much, what somebody signed a lease for 12 months ago in an apartment, they can now get a 2-bedroom house or even a 3-bedroom house in an area in Dubai like the Springs, which is 5 minutes outside the marina, both for sale, for rental, but also in terms of sales. The prices have dropped so much. If you have a level of job security, you can secure a mortgage. You can now buy a Springs villa for almost record low prices. So that, as from a family's perspective, you have a little bit of outside space. You also don't have this close proximity of getting in elevators, communal spaces that you have to share with other people, obviously, and reducing.
I disagree.
You would. I
mean, if you look at prices, they haven't declined any more than what they were doing before. So why are people buying?
But they have declined, and then year on year for 4 years we've had a declining.
Yeah, but you can't just say, well, all of a sudden now it's magically coincided with the coronavirus that people have suddenly decided here's a magic point.
Move, whereas before the impetus, I'm quite happy with my apartment. There was no driver.
Yeah, so I think that's a different point. So all of a sudden people are thinking more about buying than they did before. People were happy to rent before.
Because prices are so low.
Well, I don't think so.
Dollar's weaker, prices are lower. Interest rates have come down.
I mean, interest rates is a really good point. I mean, I think that's really, really important. So buying is much cheaper now, right? But I don't think prices. I mean, prices are still, going down slowly in exactly the same way they have been since 2015. So I don't think we've suddenly hit a magic price point where it makes everything different.
What you're saying is you don't think we've hit the bottom of the market. You're just saying that the drivers to move into a house has now increased to a level where people are actually going to act on it.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily the bottom of the market, but if we assume there's some magical line at which point people are like, okay, now it makes so much sense to buy. I don't think that's something that we've crossed. I think all of a sudden, people are now thinking maybe there's some cracking deals to be had out there, and there are. And so people have gotten into the market going, right, okay, let me find a really great deal, and then maybe taken more information about buying and said, okay, maybe I haven't got that great deal where someone's absolutely desperate to sell, but actually buying makes a huge amount of sense now that interest rates are so low.
And there has to be.
Now I'll take the plunge, whereas before, for the last 4 years, I haven't.
You have to have a degree of job security even now. Where you're prepared to take that plunge as well,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think if you're a government employee, a UAE UAE national, you've got great job security. Your income probably hasn't been affected too much. You're probably out there thinking that because you're a buyer, you can get some great deals. And there are some great deals to be had. But yeah, of course, you need that job security. You need to be sure that you're going to be here for the next couple of years at least, and that you're not going to be adversely affected by the obvious downturn that's going to follow coronavirus.
So my next question, and I have my answer to this prepared. I believe that what we're seeing now is a false dawn in the real estate market in those areas. I believe that there has been a spike in prices, a spike in the impetus to move. When that abates and when all of the buyers are sated and they've moved to wherever it is they want to move to, the issues that we have will still remain.
Yeah, I don't think we have a change to the structural issues that there are with the market, which is an imbalance of supply and demand.
Yeah,
I don't think that's changed. But what you might get is, on from this is an impetus upwards in some areas. But again, what we're saying is it's not across the whole market, right? It's select areas that are very attractive for one reason or the other. A price point, outside space, something like that. But it's certainly not a market-wide recovery. And I think you're right. I think what we'll see is we'll see the market, but even in those areas, settle back down, and then probably unless we see a remarkable recovery in population coming into the UAE or a massive reduction in deliveries,
about in another video.
Yeah, or a massive reduction in deliveries. I don't think you'll see a prolonged upward movement in the real estate market.
So conversely, what's happening with apartments?
So apartments are still doing exactly the same thing. So
should they not be declining quicker? Rents.
Well, prices? I think what you'll see is, there's going to be a global recession, and so I think that will put long-term pressure on, fundamentally the population of the UAE in terms of job losses and people moving out. Therefore, you'll have rent pressure coming from that, and on top of that, you'll then get the sales price pressure. So I think unless the UAE is able to generate more people coming in, you're going to see apartment prices continue to decline in the way that they have for 4 or 5 years already.
So, do you think as a buyer you've missed the boat to buy low price, small house accommodation?
No, we're only, when the coronavirus really hit end of March, so we're not quite 6 months into that. Yeah, I think so.
It was the beginning of last year when it was first announced.
Well, no, it's COVID-19, so it's 2019 when it actually surfaced. But I think it really affected, the UAE in March. So I think...
no, it's not COVID-19 because it's 2019.
It is.
It isn't.
It absolutely is.
It absolutely isn't. There are 18 different types of COVID virus.
No, that's...
One of us is going to have absolute egg on our faces.
That's a
I reckon it's him. He needs to look it up. COVID-19. It's not because it came out in 2019.
Yeah. So... whatever it's called for, I don't think you'd miss the boat. If you are someone for whom buying makes sense because of, and I would say the biggest driver's got to be the interest rates and job security. It's a fantastic time to buy. Yields are still good in the UAE, around about 7%. With interest rates where they are, you can halve your rent by buying. So if you've got the deposit and you've got the job security, it absolutely makes sense to buy now because you're halving your rent overnight, and I think we're, the UAE has experienced 4 or 5 years of price declines. I think it's in a good position for you to see an upside in real estate in the future, whereas somewhere like Europe or the US has seen 9-10 years of price growth. I don't think there's a lot of upside in those kind of markets.
I certainly think for a not a capital city obviously, but for a major city, Dubai as a city is undervalued. I think if you look at, and I'm going to use pounds here, I'll try and do it in dollars in my head. You're looking at 1.5, 1.4 for a 2-bedroom, probably even less in the Springs. That is £280,000. To buy a 2-bedroom house on the outskirts, like 5 minutes from the centre of London, you're going to be looking at 4 or 5 times that. Now, Dubai and London, apples and oranges, but I think the real estate market in Dubai specifically is quite undervalued now. Couple that with the weak strength of the dollar, it does mean that we're seeing a lot more movement in Dubai.
Yeah, but actually, it's really interesting to compare it to Mumbai and places like that, which are incredibly expensive. But you still have the fundamental imbalance of supply and demand, unfortunately, which I don't know what you can do about that in the short term. I mean, I think in the short term, coronavirus has delayed projects, so that's helpful in that way. But conversely, you're going to be losing jobs, so your demand is going to shrink as well. And we never had a furlough scheme here in the UAE, so people have felt the job losses. So we should be able to see it more earlier and more clearly than you might do, in the US or the UK, where when those schemes end, you're probably going to have a huge drop. So I think in that way the real estate market is adjusting organically.
So I think before we lose our own train of thought on this or topic on this podcast, I think we're both in agreement that this is something of a false dawn. We still think it's actually, if you can get the right mortgage and you have job security, it's a good time to buy.
I mean, in a false dawn, so what you might have is pockets of resistance, is what we might be saying here. So I don't know much about the springs in Dubai, but you might say,
another term
there's some kind of areas which really might just ride this out.
Well, okay, so Emirates Hills, which is my area of expertise, we've also seen a price spike. Now, nobody's leaving a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom in the marina to come to Emirates Hills. What's happened in Emirates Hills, the houses that were perceived as good value were around the sort of 12 to 18 million dirham mark, have now been sold. And so any buyer that's now looking at the Emirates Hills market is now looking at the next price point up. And they're beginning to sell. I believe in that instance that, these are the market leaders, these are individuals who own companies and run companies. They will also begin to suffer, and we'll see prices drop again in Emirates Hills. So I feel there will be pockets of resistance, but I don't think it's anything to get carried away with.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a broad-based resurgence until some point, at best next year. But I think it might be worth, if you're an investor or even an end user, looking around for those pockets of resistance where you might be paying higher than what you would have been paying 6 months ago, but there might be the ability for that area to ride out this storm better than other areas. So in Abu Dhabi, I mean, West Yas and Al Reef are two very clear ones. It's difficult to say what Yas Acres is going to do, but it seems very popular for now. And to a certain extent, Raha Gardens, that's UAE nationals only. And in Dubai, just recap the areas.
It's entry-level houses, so 2 and 3 bedroom houses. Mira, Arabian Ranches to an extent. Springs has definitely seen a resurgence because of its proximity to the marina. It's very easy to leave a 2-bedroom in the marina, 5 minutes to your 2-bedroom house in the Springs. So it's really the entry-level houses that we've seen have had a little spring in their prices. Anecdotally, to pat myself on the back, because how much I love to do that, I sold a house in Emirates Hills for a client for 15.6 million dirhams, and we've recently resold it for him and made him a handsome profit. So he's walking away with about 17 million. So it is not just in the entry levels. There is, if you find something that is an undervalued asset, it's worth taking a punt on.
We've been Two Fat Brokers. Thank you very much for your attention. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, I have obviously been watching more American TV than I thought I ever had. I apologise, Ben. It is COVID-19 because
I forgive you.
Shut up. Came out in 2019. I hang my head in shame. I have let my Dubai family down. We've been beaten by Abu Dhabi. So don't smile like that.
How would you like me to smile?
Better.